Hello, and welcome to another short box from Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar, and this week we'll be talking about the Black Crusades, or as the Traitor Legions call them, the Long War.
Now last week we discussed a little about Abbadon's character, as well as the 5th and 6th Crusade. This week we'll be focusing on Abbadon's gathering of power, but before we do, I discovered something that was actually kind of an interesting anecdote while I was doing my research. Now, as opposed to popular belief, a Black Crusade is not just led by Abbadon the Despoiler. A Black Crusade is a military campaign unleashed upon the Milky Way galaxy when the forces of chaos manage to unite under the leadership of a powerful champion of chaos. They then launch a massive offensive from the Eye of Terror against the worlds of the Imperium of Man. The term can also sometimes be used for other incursions by the mortal and demonic servants of chaos out of the smaller warp rifts that exist across the galaxy. Commanding one of those campaigns is often considered the greatest reward that can be bestowed upon a mortal servant of the Chaos Gods. Successfully achieving the stated objective of one of these lesser Black Crusades can result in the ultimate reward, ascension to the rank of Demon Prince. Now, we have discussed the first 6 Black Crusades by Abbadon, but the next crusade is led by someone other than the War Master himself.
Jihar the Lacerator.
In 599.M37, shortly before the 7th Black Crusade of Abbadon the Despoiler, a Chaos Lord of Slaanesh named Jihar the Lacerator, a member of the Emperor's Children's Traitor Legion, struck out against the Imperium. His Black Crusade encompassed a small fleet of heretic Astartes, who managed to slip through the Imperial defenses of the Akkadian Gate unnoticed to spread discontent and instigate revolts through the region of the 30 Imperial planets known as, I kid you not, the Gloom Worlds, to the galactic southwest of the Eye of Terror. Must be fairly sad with lots of rain, but anyways. He was ultimately slain on the world of Hierarch V by the efforts of the 13th Mordant Regiment of the Astra Militarum. Without his leadership, the Black Crusade swiftly collapsed into infighting and ultimately was destroyed by the Imperial forces. Well, I thought this was actually fairly interesting. Something a little different, but we do got to get back to Abbadon. Anywho, this is an often overlooked part of the Long War because it has to do with the part of war most people don't like to read about. Alliances and supply chain management. Yes, if any war is to succeed, you need allies and ample forces to accomplish your goals. The first thing Abbadon needed was a way to replenish his soldiers faster. While the Black Legion was fierce and mighty, replenishment was difficult. Normally, replenishment came like it did with the 6th Crusade, usurping other war bands of Chaos Space Marines. While this was a decent way to gather more men, it had some drawbacks that Abbadon could no longer overlook. One, it was just simply too sporadic. He needed a continually supply of Space Marines to grow his ranks. And 2, a lot of warbands just didn't want to bend the knee to Abbadon, which meant that there was usually fight, and when there's a fight, men die. Figuring he could solve these problems with some resources from the Imperium, he struck out, and in 811.M37, he began his 7th Black Crusade. Now, this crusade is usually known as the Ghost War, because instead of his usual burn and pillage methods to get humanity's attention, the forces of chaos spewed forth from the Great Warp Rift, past Cadia, and then simply disappeared. The following years saw a game of hide-and-seek played between the forces of chaos and the Imperium of Man, which spread confusion, paranoia, disinformation, and deceit across the galaxy. Now, over the years of this conflict, Abbadon led many raids of Imperial planets, as well as his generals and warlords, yet 2 conflicts really stick out. The first being on the planet Midian, against the mighty chapter of the Blood Angels. When the Blood Angels Space Marine chapter battled against the forces of chaos at Midian, Abbadon singled them out with implacable fury. He led a band of coronate berserkers into the teeth of the Blood Angels' devastator positions. Even the Blood Angels' own assault troops could not dislodge the frenzied warbands and recapture the bodies of their comrades. But before this company was completely wiped out, a mysterious loyalist chapter arrived to save them. Like a shadow from the deep, they arrived and tore into the enemy with a brutal bloodthirst that could only be quenched when the Black Legion retreated. Now it is written within the Canticle of Cassandra Lev, Volume 106, the Sainted Sisters' highly mythologized and oblique account of the wars of the 7th Black Crusade, is found mention of a gray-clad Space Marine chapter who came from the Outer Night to aid the Imperium, and whose
jagged maw did swallow the stars, and whose black gaze did mirror the void of the oblivion.
In the course of the Chronicle, the chapter's warship set upon Abbadon's forces, following the disastrous defeat and routing of the Blood Angels at Midian, and attacking and pursuing forces, as St. Lev writes,
fell upon the servants of the Skulled One with great fury from the darkness, unseen as the beast that lurks beneath the black waters. Death for death, blood for blood. Thus were the sons of Sanguinius bought respite, and did turn back upon their pursuers, and so were the damned traitors of the false gods driven unto their ruin.
Images of these events can be found upon the walls of the cemetery world of Hippocytus, created to house the honored dead of that war, depicting in repeated frescoes and bas-relief. Curiously, the faces of the intervening space marines depicted there are obscured with featureless discs of black obsidian. Given the largely unknown history of the starfaring Carcharodons chapter, accounts of their activities can only be constructed from recorded historical incidents, and fragments recorded that are believed to have involved the Carcharodons on balance of evidence. Yep, that's right. It was the Space Sharks. Now, they're a strange chapter that we discussed in our last live Vox called Weird Ones. Check it out when you got the time. But by the end of the week, I'll have been doing a bonus Vox on the Badab War, which the Carcharodons are very prevalent in, but unfortunately we have a schedule to keep today. I just want to let you all know that this is the first time the Carcharodons have been seen since the early M33. Some have rumored that the Carcharodons are actually a second founding of the Raven Guard. But regardless, because of this intrusion to his plans for the Blood Angels, Abbadon invaded Makan. Now, in the world of Makan, the Black Legion and its allies faced another company of Blood Angels. The Traitor Legion had ravaged the world, putting its remote dust mill towns to the torch and tearing apart the Grand Cathedral of Radiance, raised to honor the might of the Emperor. Arriving in time to halt the escape of the traitors, the sons of Sanguinius set up defensive positions around the Black Legion landing zone in an attempt to cut them off from their fleet. After a bloody struggle, the Blood Angels companies were almost completely wiped out at the hands of Abbadon the Despoiler and his primary lieutenants, the Sorcerer Lord Iskander Kaon, and the Swordsmaster Telemachon Lyris. Yet the Blood Angels Reclusiarch Thelestian Joris fought on and soon became one of the few Imperial heroes to ever land a blow against the War Master of Chaos. With his chapter devastated, the chaplain endured weeks of hardship in the wilderness and the constant trials of keeping his crazed warriors undetected on Makan. My apologies. I failed to mention that Joris led a death company. Now, death companies are a special unit where its members are consumed by a permanent, debilitating psychosis known as
the Black Rage,
which is an inherent risk for any Astartes who bears the Blood Angel's gene seed. Now, if you wish to know more, check out our Vox on
Guilliman's Legacy.
We talk all about him there. But anyways, when the time proved right, Joris led his death company in a lightning raid behind enemy lines, butchering the unprepared sworn warriors of the Despoiler's honor guard, and allowing the Reclusiarch to lock blades with Abbadon himself. It is said the Chaos War Master still bears the scars of that battle, even 3 standard millennia later. Whatever the truth of the matter, it is known that the Despoiler honored Joris once the war was over, much like he did Sigismund. It seems that he honors those great enough to almost kill him. After Makan, hundreds of Blood Angel corpses were desecrated, their gene seed ruined beyond recovery. Of all the chapter, only Reclusiarch Joris and his death company, clad in their battered and broken black ceramite, were seated in makeshift thrones made from the armor of those Black Legion warriors they had killed on that fateful night. In the final decades of the 37th millennium, the Blood Angels were a broken chapter, ravaged by the Black Legion on the world's Makan during the tumultuous final years of the Ghost War. Although the Blood Angels restored their strength over the following centuries, for the first time it introduced the threat of mortality upon one of the proudest and noblest first founding chapters. Abbadon would return to the warp with the gene seeds stolen from the Loyalist Space Marines during this conflict to create new Chaos Space Marines with the aid of Fabius Bile. Now, I gotta say, of all the horrible people and things in this galaxy, few hold a candle to the vile Fabius Bile. He's right up there with Illuminator Zaris. Yet, as we have discussed, morality is not much of an issue with Abbadon. so he hired the vile apothecary to start making him some space marines. Now that he had a source of steady reinforcements, he set about making allies. And so it was, in the year of 999.M37, Abbadon launched the 8th Black Crusade. The Black Legion and its Chaos allies struck out from the Eye of Terror in every direction as the 8th Black Crusade raged across the stars. At first, the Imperium could only guess at the Traitor Legion's plans, as some raids accounted for the genocidal extermination of entire settlements, while others only seemed to cause limited carnage by the horrific standards of the Black Legion, of course. On the moons of Tychus, 8 of the 20 crater cities were peeled open to the void, their inhabitants freezing in place while others remained untouched. The Charchus pilgrim vessel of the Divine Path was waylaid en route, and 999 of its passengers were murdered in ascending order of the pilgrim tokens they carried. The rest were left to weep over the fallen. In what later became known as the Skull Gather, tens of thousands of men, women, and children were killed across the Segmentum Obscurus in a variety of ways and in specific numbers, their corpses left in ritualistic patterns. This slaughter was part of a plot to appease Tzeentch, the numbers and patterns creating a mathematical equation of terrible and profane perfection. While the Imperial forces pursued the Black Legion, trying to bring them to battle, the Inquisition attempted to break the cipher, driving hundreds of adepts insane in the process. Finally, on the Forge world of Rithkarn, the traitors instigated a massive uprising of the mutant workers, plunging the world into chaos and ruin. In the confusion, the Black Legion sacrificed the Council of Ruling Adeptus Mechanicus, Tech Magi, and the gears of their own Manufactoria. With their destruction, the complex sequence of death was complete, and the Master of Fates was greatly pleased. The constructs beneath the crater cities of Tychus began to glow brighter with each ritual slaughter until, at the culmination of the 9th, the structures began to melt. By the time agents of the Inquisition identified a pattern in the Black Legion's seemingly random acts, Abbadon had already achieved his aims. He had gained the great god of change's favor, and he disappeared back into the eye. After this moment, Abbadon begins to ramp up his war, and because of his newfound favor, gained a higher seat at the table of corruption. We will see next week that Perturbo, the demon prince of the Iron Warriors, is even willing to ally himself with the War Master. Yes, by the end of the 8th Crusade, Abbadon had become a big man in the Warp, which meant new pressures. Not many of the higher entities of the Warp were happy about this, and many started to gun for the despoiler. Abbadon would foil most of these plans and continue on in his rise to power. Now, next week, join us as we discuss the 9th and 10th Crusade, where in the 9th Abbadon performs his last raid to remove a vital piece of the Imperium that stands against him, and the 10th, where he teams up with the fallen Primarch, Perturbo. If you enjoyed this Vox, feel free to subscribe, comment, follow, and like. And if you really like our stuff, please join our membership squad on our YouTube channel, Tales of Asheraka. With your support, we can continue to build and grow our Voxes, as well as some cool extra stuff for you guys to join. Once again, we need the support of you, our dear listeners, so we can continue to make a successful show that you all enjoy. We will also be opening up a shop for you guys so you can get some sweet swag. But until then, we need support in the form of members. If you are listening on Spotify, don't worry, you can help as well. If you click the support podcast button on any of the descriptions on Spotify, you can donate to our success as well. Well, I think that's enough grandstanding for me today. I'll just go ahead and get off my soapbox and say, as always,
Until next time, this is Zeckthar, signing off.